Before I begin, I want to make something very clear, because the title of this piece may cause some people to make assumptions before they hear a single word. The title is The Crazy Card. Some of you already know exactly what that means. Some of you have seen it used. Some of you have heard it thrown around casually. And some of you may not understand the context at all. So before we go any further, I want to explain what this piece is and what it is not. This piece has absolutely nothing to do with anyone who is living with a mental health condition. It has nothing to do with individuals who have been diagnosed with a mental disorder. It has nothing to do with people who struggle with emotional regulation, trauma responses, or neurological differences. It has nothing to do with people who were born with learning challenges or developmental differences. It has nothing to do with anyone who is genuinely navigating mental health realities. This piece is not about them. What I am talking about here is something entirely different. I am talking about the way the word crazy gets used as a weapon. I am talking about the way people use that word as a shortcut, a shield, a distraction, and a scapegoat. When a relationship ends, I am talking about manipulation, not mental illness. I am talking about projection, not diagnosis. I am talking about the way this word gets thrown into conversations only when the speaker needs to protect themselves from accountability. So before we begin, I want you to understand that this piece is not mocking mental health. It is not dismissing mental health. It is not labeling anyone with a real condition. It is calling out the misuse of a word that should never be used casually, especially not as a tool to harm someone during a breakup, a separation, a divorce, or a custody battle. This is an awareness piece. This is an educational piece. This is a piece about manipulation, timing, and language, not mental illness. Now that we're clear on that, we can begin.
Now let's begin. Funny how chemistry works, isn't it? For 12 whole months, they are your destiny. Your soulmate, you share a bed, you share a key, you share a future you swear is carved in stone. You take the vacations, you post the pictures. You tell your friends you finally found the one. During all of that time, all of those months of closeness, intimacy, and devotion, you never hear the word crazy. Not once. Not even hinted at. Because when things are good, that word doesn't exist. They are inseparable. They brag about each other. They defend each other. They talk about how they finally found someone who understands them. They are affectionate in public. They build routines together. They plan holidays and talk about tomorrows as if everything is solid and real. But then the fantasy cracks. The mirror stops flattering you back. And suddenly, overnight, they are not just incompatible. They are not just human. They are not just hurting. Suddenly they are crazy. It is the magic word, the shortcut, the social disinfectant. Because if they are crazy, then you do not have to admit you broke a heart to feel whole. You do not have to admit you lied to protect your image. You do not have to admit you were the one who changed. When someone tells you about their breakup or their divorce or their custody battle, pay attention to the language they use, not just the story, the language. Because the story will always be shaped to make the speaker look like the reasonable one, But the language reveals something deeper, and the word that appears more than any other, the word that gets thrown around casually and confidently, is crazy. You will notice that this word only shows up after the relationship ends. It never shows up during the vacations, the anniversaries, the family gatherings, the nights spent laughing on the couch, the mornings spent making breakfast together. It only appears when something is at stake: reputation, assets, custody, sympathy, or control of the narrative. And that timing matters more than the accusation itself. People use the word crazy because it works. It is the fastest way to gain sympathy, the fastest way to avoid accountability, the fastest way to make themselves look like the victim without having to explain their own behavior. It is a strategy that requires no evidence and receives almost no pushback. The moment someone says they're crazy, most listeners shift their empathy toward the speaker without asking a single question. Sometimes the person using the word crazy is the one who caused the harm. Sometimes they were the one who crossed boundaries, who lied, who manipulated, who created the chaos. The word becomes their shield. It becomes the distraction that keeps everyone from looking too closely at their own actions. It allows them to take their own guilt, their own wrongdoing, and place it on the other person. Projection is powerful. It turns the victim into the problem and washes the speaker's hands clean in public. You only tend to hear that word when things get legal, when papers are signed, when anger rises, when accountability feels too heavy, especially in custody battles, especially when the courts get involved, especially when the narrative has to justify why contact should be limited or why one side deserves more control. So the next time someone comes to you talking about their breakup, their separation, their divorce, their custody battle, or their court hearing, listen carefully. Count how many times they suddenly call the other person crazy. Count how quickly that word appears. Count how confidently they say it, even though they never said it once during the relationship. And then ask yourself, if this person was truly unstable, truly dangerous, truly unpredictable, why did it take a breakup for that truth to appear? Why didn't it show up during the year of closeness? Why didn't it show up during the months of affection? Why didn't it show up during the time when they were bragging about how perfect everything was? The timing tells the story, not the accusation. One year, they were perfect. Breakup week. They're crazy. It is not always a diagnosis. It is not always a revelation. It is not always the truth. It is often just an exit strategy, a way to avoid sitting with your own part in what happened, a convenient label that shields the speaker while adding unnecessary harm to the other person. Pay attention to the shift. Pay attention to the timing. Pay attention to the projection. The word is not the truth. The word is the excuse.